What's up, everybody? It's time for another Coffee and Semmler. It's that time in the afternoon when you're desperately trying to recover from lunch, trying not to fall into that coma after you had a burger, even though you didn't say you were going to have a burger or wasn't going to have a burger, had a burger, had fries. Now it's time for coffee. So, hope you guys have some nice coffee or some tea, if that's what you like. And, just going to talk a little bit about this whole cold fiasco and this cold SK Gaming getting 16-0'd. It's fun. I think there's a lot of elements, at play here. And, just going to ramble through a few topics, and we'll see how things go. So, SK Gaming, last night, Pro League North America, online, with a stand-in. This sound familiar? Just got beaten 16-0 by Renegades. And so keep in mind that SK Gaming the other night got beat by Liquid as well. And also keep in mind that they are coming off of a long break, and they are moving in, and they're all living in this big house together. Hell, I think it was Taco the other day posted a picture of them all going on a bike ride after the official matches of the night. Apparently they all bought bikes. They think it's going to be good. What I think is that Taco tried to sabotage the team because they were all so focused on their aching legs the next day. They couldn't play CS. And so obviously Taco, the traitor, we're going to get you, Taco. It's the last thing we do. Health is not a good enough excuse if it's going to cost you matchmaking games or official matches. All kidding aside, pretty cool to see that they're all exercising as a team. The main thing, though, that I wonder is always, as always, even when, obviously circumstances before when they were obviously broke and trying to just make something happen when they first moved to North America, they're all living in the same house. They're sleeping in the same beds. They're no room anywhere at all. So team house, right. You're trying to cut down on costs and you're trying to keep everything together so that you guys can actually play your official matches. Now, when you guys are making very good salaries, you guys are making quite a bit of money. I wonder if the team house way is still the best way, or if it would have been possible perhaps to do some kind of deal similar to what Astralis are doing right now, where they have an office and, all the players live around town. There's the office, move into the, you go to the office every day, you play all that sort of stuff, right? Or that kind of concept, right? I think that is the superior concept. It's kind of like, not a player, but it's kind of how I operate right now, where I'm in my office and I have a little office that I rent, right? Just so I have some workspace at, in the city, right? And so when I go home, then I can kind of mentally check out of work, mentally check out, just let off steam, kind of mentally check out a little bit. Obviously still, keeping tabs on things, but not, there's a step back, right? And this is the problem I think that has existed with team houses. I kind of lived in a team house in a way back when we lived in the good studio as well. First moved here to Sweden, and it was about actually getting everybody together in one house, right? And the way to cut down on costs, because we were all broke casters, was we rent a house together, pool our resources together, run the studio out of the house, and kind of turn the house into home base. Now, that went on for about a year and a half, something along those lines. And it's not always easy, right? You're living together. Basically, we started out, I think, with like 5 guys. Yeah, we started out with 5, and then it got up to 6, and then it got up to 7, and then I think at one point we must have been like 12 or 13 people living in that house, just nuts, because we had an entire Dota team living out of the garage. We turned the garage into a bunk room and just stacked people in there like cordwood so that, they had a place to sleep, but then they were playing games all day. It was a mess. So can kind of speak to how it can be a little bit stressful sometimes when you're actually living together and there's no way to like unwind and de-stress when there's constantly people around you. Obviously you can go out and take a walk, right? And that's pretty much your only option. Go out, fuck off, get into town, or go walk in the woods, in the park or whatever, right? But like that's pretty much your only release, because when you come back home, there is no, personal space. And if you just had it out with one of the guys, well, there's no like, oh, I'm going to go back to my place, have a beer, we'll talk about it tomorrow. It's like, well, we live in the same house. So when I walk out to get some food, maybe you're there, and it starts all over again, right? So it can be a little frustrating sometimes, right, to live in that kind of atmosphere. And we've had examples of this in the past with CS, right? When Fnatic, this was almost, it was the first roster of Fnatic pretty much, when they decided to boot camp together before a DreamHack. And they all pretty much nearly killed each other. They were like, nope, never doing that again. No boot camp. Nope. I think it lasted like a couple weeks, and that was pretty much it. Like they were like, nope, done. And so, I guess it's commendable, right? And it makes for some sick footage. The fact that, obviously we had the Valve highlights with Fur, et cetera, all the sacrifices that they've made. It makes for some sick footage. But Now I wonder if the reality is if it wouldn't be better for the guys to have a bit of personal space, because when you live together for that long with people, you play together, you work together, all hours of the day, all hours of the night, and then you need to have some space, some room to unwind, and you don't necessarily have that. It can get a little bit tricky. And then you go into a sort of scenario like this, right, where you're coming back from a break. Unfortunately, one of your key teammates, and I think now we're really seeing how key Fur is, just from Cold's comments, right? And I'll get into that in a minute, but we're seeing one of your key teammates who can't make it, obviously health issues, right? Getting surgeries. I mean, he posted a picture the other day for he had like a bandage and everything. But you're seeing one of your key teammates not being able to be there to participate, right? To play with you. And you're used to a certain standard, right? I mean, if you're Cold, if you're anybody on that team now, you're used to everybody knowing their role, being pretty much the best in their role in North America at least, right? And the world, in SK's case, I mean, they're pretty goddamn good. You're used to this kind of level of play, and you're coming back from a break, and you want to just hit the ground running, not waste any time, get right back up there, start dominating again. And that's not happening. You got beat up by Liquid, a team that you never lost to before. You got beat up by them, and now you just got 16-0'd by Renegades, who for a while could have been seen as a bit of a laughingstock, right? That they just weren't, they were just not going to be a world beater team anytime soon. Now they've obviously changed up. They brought in Ricky. They've played some 6CS, and I gotta say, I don't want to take anything away from Renegades yesterday. They played really well. They took advantage of what SK were giving them. Went back and watched the game this morning when I woke up. Excuse me. They took advantage of what SK were giving them. It was clear that they were at the beginning, right? Once they tried to figure out what the setup was, okay, now we know where Showtime is. It was clear that they wanted to put pressure over in B halls. They put pressure over in B halls, and then as soon as SK start to get it in their heads, right, we need to be aggressive in B halls. They were already rotating, putting pressure over on long, catwalk. They were playing a very smart game, Renegades. I really enjoyed watching the game from their perspective, not so much from SK. Because I think as Cold kind of made clear of his sentiments, at least in his tweet, right? He's saying, well, Showtime's super passive. And, well, yeah, I think most people are going to be super passive when you compare them to Fur, because Fur is one of those guys who loves to just go aggressive sometimes. And so if your core game plan is kind of built around these different elements all interlocking, and you're used to one guy being the ultra aggressive guy who's going to go and look for a fight, most of the time win that fight, right? And get something for you there, and you don't have that element anymore. Instead, you have, basically a rookie kind of. Showtime is obviously not a rookie. He's been playing in some teams, but now he's standing in with basically the best team from his region. Maybe a little bit of something going on there in his head, and you're expecting him to fill this ultra aggressive role. It's a bit tough, right? You got to feel a little bit for Showtime. It's a lot to ask of him. Hey, by the way, you need to go ahead and fill one of the best players, fill his role. Right, okay. How to do that. On Dust 2 as well, where it's tough. Nuke, it's still, I think the teams are still figuring out exactly what they want to do on that map. There's a lot of room for maneuvering still. But on Dust 2, it felt like, watching that game, it felt like, man, this is just like a lot of, you've seen this all the time, right? Where there's almost this element of chance that comes in for a successful CT side on Dust 2, where you're going to take risks, and if those risks don't pay off, you're screwed, basically. And then the T's just keep rolling over you, and it's so hard to come back from that. And so it was almost like we're seeing that, or at least in this case, we saw that kind of flip, right? Where Dust 2 is a fun map because it's gone through a lot of different evolutions. It's gone through super dominant CT sides where the T side really struggled to get anything going, back towards another T side favored sort of scenario, and where you had to take a lot of risks as CT to get anything out of your rounds, a lot of aggressive pushes like the French like to do, and things like this basically to make it work. And so I think yesterday what we saw basically, and Cold kind of made that clear with his tweet where he was just like, man, Showtime is really passive, is that when they were trying, so they struggled to get into it. Oh, also something to keep in mind, apparently Fallen raged at them or something like that after Nuke, and so maybe that destabilized the team a little bit, put them on a little off kilter. Renegades are obviously going to be fired up because they just beat SK on a map, so coming into map 2, they're going to be like, sweet, let's go, right? We're already up 1-0, let's take it to them. They're going to be confident. SK, if they're rattled that they've lost these 3 maps now, Liquid, Renegades included, and Fallen just jumped on them for it, they're going into Dust 2 where it's a bit of a puggy map. Again, anything can happen. They're not in the best mental state, and they have the stand-in in Showtime, and people are frustrated because he's not hitting that level that Fur is used to hitting. And so you see all these elements, and they're living in a house together, so they're constantly around each other. I start to see the elements come together, right? So I mean, I'm not saying that this is definitive in any way. This is definitely me speculating right now on like what I see when I look at the scenario and I try and see all the different elements coming together. I just like to think about it sometimes. I like the team dynamics. I like to look at teams and try and see, based off the information that we have, what could be happening with that team as far as dynamics are concerned and how the relationships are going. And so you see all these things coming together, where there was also some classic cases, right, where, I mean, sometimes you do have to go for the BDP, right? And something's not working and you feel like, okay, well, I have to step up and make the difference. And I felt like that kind of definitely eventually hurt SK quite a bit, and towards the mid to late of the first half, where you just saw them kind of running into retakes. That's kind of where they'd given up the ghost, right? They were running into retakes one after another, basically just committing very basic mistakes as far as retakes are concerned, CT side CS, basically, especially when you lose a 2v5 and you lost the 2v5 because everybody was basically just running in one after another. It wasn't until, unfortunately for SK, right, it wasn't until the 2-on-2 where they kind of paired up and came up CT ramp and started working together that it's like, okay, now we're starting to look at something. But unfortunately, Taco walks around the corner first, gets op point blank by Ricky, and that pretty much ends it, right? There's nothing Showtime can do at that point. So, oh man, just a really tough match, because you could just see this complete and utter destruction on SK's side, where they were already struggling to start. They didn't get the pistol round to go their way. Then they got trounced 4 rounds in a row. And then it just starts turning into, I'm going to be the hero, or, right, like just uncoordinated play on their part. Obviously, as this continues to go on, Renegades are getting more and more fired up. They're starting to win more duels that maybe they wouldn't otherwise. And you can just see the whole situation fall apart until really it was the total collapse, like 16-0, boom, blowout. So tough. But I just wonder if that's like what could happen for SK in the future, right? I mean, yes, okay, they have this house now, and I'm not a huge fan of the house. I mean, it could be also, I mean, it obviously makes it a bit more easy, right? This is something I think the TSM wanted to do in the past, right? Which was, hey, we want you guys to be in one location so we can do content around you, and obviously, do content to please our sponsors. Our sponsors are looking for activations. We need to do something to do that. Having everybody in one location to do videos and fun activities and stuff like that obviously helps, right? And so there's obviously that real like strong thing right there for CS. The problem is that in CS, not to say that other pro gamers don't have girlfriends, but in CS, lives are a bit more established. In general, that doesn't really pan out that way. And so I would think that maybe it is time for a team to really make it clear, this is our strategy. This is what we're going to be doing. We're eliminating the team house. We're making an office now. Everybody can house themselves. They'll be around the office. Maybe they get a subsidy from the team or something like that. But, everybody's around the office and they go into the office a bit like Na'Vi do right now, where it's like, 10 a.m., practice starts. Okay, then, you're there at 10 a.m. Why couldn't it be the same thing with an office sort of scenario where, just like everybody lives within half an hour of the office or so? Boom. By 10 a.m., everybody's at the office, ready to prac. Okay, now we're out, right? Could be something like that to explore. And I think that would be interesting for SK. But right now, I think that SK, it's not the end of the world. Cold had a bit of a meltdown. Clearly frustrated with the start that they've had after the break. I think that's the main thing here. It's just that you've had a long time off. You're expecting big things. You're expecting big things coming back into the season. You want to get into the fight, and then it just feels like perhaps there's some frustration because they clearly didn't get the start that they wanted, and they don't have the best conditions to show their best right now. And so, far from ideal, but it'll be fun. Let's see how SK progress past this point, because you can be sure, considering they all live in the same house, they're probably talking about how to, calm down, guys, take a breath, let's figure it out. And so, we shall see. Till next time.